The morning sun cast long shadows across Fort Henderson's armory as Tiffany Brooks adjusted her wire-rimmed reading glasses and squinted at the microscopic serial numbers etched into the scope's internal components. Her fellow soldiers had dubbed them granny glasses, and the nickname had stuck like superglue to her military reputation. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. At 24, Tiffany was already considered an oddity in the 82nd Airborne Division. While other paratroopers spent their downtime at the gym or the shooting range, she could be found hunched over optical equipment with a magnifying glass, meticulously cataloging every scratch, every misalignment, every imperfection that could mean the difference between life and death downrange. "Four eyes is at it again," someone muttered as Boots shuffled past her workstation. Tiffany pushed her glasses up her nose and continued her inspection of the loopholed Mark 8 scope. She'd learned to tune out the comments, the snickers, the not-so-subtle suggestions that maybe she'd be better suited for a desk job in supply or administration. What they didn't understand was that her supposed weakness was actually her greatest strength. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Tiffany Brooks completed her morning ritual in the Fort Henderson Armory. Her reading glasses caught the harsh light as she bent over the disassembled Night Force ATAC-R scope, her practiced hands moving through the familiar dance of optical maintenance. Every lens, every adjustment mechanism, every internal component received the same meticulous attention that had made her the division's most thorough equipment specialist. "Brooks, you've been working on that scope for 2 hours," called out Sergeant First Class Marcus Thompson from across the armory. His voice carried the mild exasperation of a supervisor watching someone take too long on what should be routine maintenance. Tiffany pushed her glasses up her nose and continued her inspection of the loopholed Mark 8 scope. She'd learned to tune out the comments, the snickers, the not-so-subtle suggestions that maybe she'd be better suited for a desk job in supply or administration. What they didn't understand was that her supposed weakness was actually her greatest strength. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Tiffany Brooks completed her morning ritual in the Fort Henderson Armory. Her reading glasses caught the harsh light as she bent over the disassembled Night Force ATAC-R scope, her practiced hands moving through the familiar dance of optical maintenance. Every lens, every adjustment mechanism, every internal component received the same meticulous attention that had made her the division's most thorough equipment specialist. "Brooks, you've been working on that scope for 2 hours," called out Sergeant First Class Marcus Thompson from across the armory. His voice carried the mild exasperation of a supervisor watching someone take too long on what should be routine maintenance. Tiffany didn't look up from her work. Through her magnifying lens, she could see a hairline crack in the scope's internal prism assembly. Invisible to the naked eye, but potentially catastrophic under the stress of combat operations. "This one has structural damage in the prism housing. If it goes to the field like this, the zero will shift after the first few shots." Thompson walked over, his desert boots scuffing against the polished concrete floor. He squinted at the scope, seeing nothing but pristine optical equipment. "Looks fine to me. What are you seeing that I'm not?" Tiffany finally looked up, her reading glasses reflecting the overhead lights. She had learned not to sound condescending when explaining technical details to people who couldn't see what she could see. Here, in the third prism element, there's a stress fracture that runs about 2 millimeters along the mounting edge. Under recoil, it'll propagate and throw off the entire optical alignment. Thompson leaned closer, squinting through his own eyes at the component Tiffany indicated. After several seconds of frustrated examination, he straightened up. "I'll take your word for it, Brooks. Tag it for replacement and move on to the next one." This was Tiffany's world, identifying problems that others couldn't see, understanding systems that others took for granted, being right about technical issues while being dismissed as overcautious or obsessive. Her thick reading glasses had become a symbol of weakness in a culture that valued physical prowess and aggressive confidence above analytical precision. The irony wasn't lost on her. In civilian life, her exceptional near vision and attention to detail would have made her a sought-after quality control specialist or precision instrument technician. In the military, it made her the weird girl with glasses who took too long on routine tasks. Brooks, when you're done playing scientist, we need these scopes zeroed for the new batch of recruits, called Staff Sergeant Jennifer Martinez from the doorway. Martinez was everything Tiffany wasn't. Tall, athletically built, with the kind of natural confidence that came from excelling at traditional military skills. Range time starts at 1,400 hours. Tiffany carefully reassembled the damaged scope, each component fitting into place with mechanical precision. "I'll have them ready, but this one needs to go back to the manufacturer. The prism damage will cause accuracy problems." Martinez approached Tiffany's workstation, her expression mixing professional respect with personal puzzlement. Over the past 18 months, she had watched Tiffany identify equipment problems that everyone else missed, prevent malfunctions that could have injured soldiers, and maintained optical systems to standards that exceeded manufacturer specifications. Yet Tiffany remained stuck in the equipment maintenance role, passed over for advanced training opportunities and field assignments. "Brooks, I've been meaning to ask you something," Martinez said, lowering her voice. "You've been working with scopes for 2 years now. Ever actually used one in the field?" Tiffany finished securing the scope's mounting rings and looked up through her reading glasses. "Qualification shoots only, standard marksmanship training. I'm a support personnel, not a shooter." "But you understand these systems better than most of our designated marksmen. You know the ballistics, the adjustments, the environmental factors." Martinez paused, studying Tiffany with new interest. "Have you ever calculated firing solutions?" The question caught Tiffany off guard. She had indeed calculated firing solutions, hundreds of them. Every scope she zeroed required mathematical analysis of bullet trajectory, atmospheric conditions, and environmental factors. She had developed her own calculation methods that were more precise than the standard military formulas, accounting for variables that most shooters ignored. "I calculate zero conformations for all the scopes I service," Tiffany replied carefully. "Ballistic coefficients, environmental compensation, tracking verification. Has to be mathematically perfect or the equipment fails when someone needs it most." Martinez nodded slowly, recognizing technical competence that went far beyond routine maintenance. "Show me one of your calculation sheets." Tiffany opened her notebook, revealing pages covered with detailed mathematical analyses. Each scope she had worked on had its own section, complete with ballistic tables, environmental compensation charts, and tracking verification data. The mathematical precision was extraordinary, covering variables and scenarios that most military personnel never considered. Martinez studied the calculations with growing amazement. "Brooks, this is professional-grade ballistic analysis. Where did you learn to calculate like this?" "Books, online resources, trial and error," Tiffany replied. "When you're responsible for optical equipment that people depend on, you need to understand every aspect of how it functions. The mathematics just make sense once you break down all the variables." Martinez flipped through several pages of calculations, noting the systematic approach and mathematical sophistication. "Have you ever tested these calculations in actual shooting scenarios?" Tiffany adjusted her glasses, a nervous habit she'd developed over years of defending her unconventional methods. "During equipment verification shoots, I test every scope I service at maximum effective range to confirm tracking accuracy and mathematical models. Usually I'm more accurate than the standard military calculation tables." The admission hung in the air between them. Martinez was beginning to understand that Tiffany Brooks represented an untapped resource, someone with exceptional technical knowledge and mathematical skills who had been categorized as support personnel because she didn't fit the traditional mold of a military marksman. "Brooks, what's the longest shot you've ever calculated a solution for?" Tiffany considered the question. Her personal projects had included theoretical calculations for extreme range scenarios, mathematical exercises that pushed beyond standard military applications. "Theoretically, I've worked out solutions for shots up to 2,500 meters, accounting for environmental variables and ballistic performance. Mathematics is solvable if you account for all the factors." Martinez felt a chill of recognition. She was looking at someone who possessed rare analytical capabilities, hidden behind reading glasses and buried in routine equipment maintenance. "Have you ever shared these calculations with anyone?" "Who would be interested?" Tiffany asked with a slight smile. "I'm the girl with glasses who takes too long cleaning scopes. Nobody asks equipment techs about advanced ballistics." Martinez made a decision that would change both their lives. Pack up your notebook, Brooks. There's someone you need to meet. Staff Sergeant Martinez led Tiffany across the sprawling Fort Henderson complex, past training facilities and administrative buildings, toward a section she'd never visited. The Special Operations Training Center occupied its own isolated compound, separated from the main base by security checkpoints and restricted access protocols. "Where exactly are we going?" Tiffany asked, clutching her notebook and trying to keep pace with Martinez's longer strides. Her reading glasses bounced slightly with each step, and she pushed them back up her nose, a gesture that had become automatic over years of dealing with ill-fitting military-issued frames. "To meet someone who might appreciate your particular skill set," Martinez replied without elaborating. They approached a checkpoint where military police verified their credentials with unusual thoroughness. Beyond the gate, the atmosphere felt different, more focused, more intense, charged with the kind of energy that surrounded elite military units. The building Martinez led her to was unremarkable from the outside, a standard military structure that could have housed anything from administrative offices to supply storage. But inside, Tiffany found herself in what appeared to be an advanced ballistics laboratory. Computers displayed trajectory calculations, environmental monitoring equipment tracked atmospheric conditions in real time, and precision rifles were mounted on testing apparatuses that looked more like scientific instruments than military weapons. "Martinez, this better be important," called a voice from behind a bank of computers. "I've got 3 different ballistic models running simultaneously, and they're all giving me different solutions for the same shot." The speaker emerged from behind the equipment, a lean man in his 30s with the weathered look of someone who'd spent considerable time in challenging environments. His uniform bore no name tape, and his rank insignia identified him as Master Sergeant. Everything about him suggested special operations, from his confident bearing to the way his eyes automatically cataloged potential threats and exits. "Master Sergeant Collins, I'd like you to meet Specialist Brooks," Martinez said. "She's our optical equipment specialist, but I think she might be able to help with your ballistic modeling problem." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Collins studied Tiffany with the kind of professional assessment she'd grown accustomed to. The slight surprise at her youth, the automatic dismissal because of her glasses and non-combat role, followed by polite skepticism. "No offense, specialist, but I'm working on some pretty advanced theoretical problems. This isn't standard marksmanship stuff." "What kind of theoretical problems?" Tiffany asked, adjusting her glasses and moving closer to the computer displays. The mathematical models on the screens were immediately familiar to her: trajectory calculations, atmospheric compensation algorithms, ballistic coefficient analyses. But she could see inconsistencies in the data, variables that weren't being properly accounted for. Collins gestured toward the displays with obvious frustration. "I'm trying to develop firing solutions for extreme range scenarios, shots beyond 2,000 meters in challenging environmental conditions. The computer models keep giving me different answers depending on which atmospheric variables I prioritize. It's like mathematics breaks down at those distances." Tiffany studied the displays more carefully, her analytical mind automatically processing the complex data. She could see the problem immediately. The models were treating atmospheric conditions as uniform across the entire bullet trajectory, when in reality, environmental factors vary significantly over long distances. "Your models are assuming consistent atmospheric conditions," she said quietly, "but at extreme range, you're dealing with multiple atmospheric layers. Temperature, pressure, and humidity can vary dramatically between shooting position and target. You need to calculate for atmospheric gradients, not average conditions." Collins raised an eyebrow, his skepticism beginning to shift toward interest. "Atmospheric gradients?" "The bullet travels through different air masses during its flight path," Tiffany explained, moving closer to the computer displays. "Each layer has different density characteristics that affect trajectory differently. Most ballistic programs treat the atmosphere as uniform, but that's not reality." She opened her notebook and began sketching mathematical relationships on a nearby whiteboard. If you model the trajectory as passing through discrete atmospheric zones, accounting for temperature and pressure gradients, you get much more accurate predictions. Collins raised an eyebrow, his skepticism beginning to shift toward interest. Atmospheric gradients? The bullet travels through different air masses during its flight path, Tiffany explained, moving closer to the computer displays. Each layer has different density characteristics that affect trajectory differently. Most ballistic programs treat the atmosphere as uniform, but that's not reality. She opened her notebook and began sketching mathematical relationships on a nearby whiteboard. If you model the trajectory as passing through discrete atmospheric zones, accounting for temperature and pressure gradients, you get much more accurate predictions. Collins watched as Tiffany filled the whiteboard with calculations that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of atmospheric physics and ballistic theory. Her mathematical approach was systematic and thorough, incorporating variables that his computer models had been averaging or ignoring entirely. "Where did you learn atmospheric modeling?" Collins asked, his tone shifting from skeptical to genuinely curious. "I didn't learn it anywhere specific," Tiffany replied, still writing calculations. "When you're testing optical equipment at long range, you notice that environmental factors affect performance in predictable ways. The mathematics just describe what you observe in the field." Martinez watched the interaction with growing satisfaction. She had recognized that Tiffany possessed exceptional analytical abilities, but seeing her engage with advanced ballistic theory confirmed that her instincts had been correct. "Brooks, show him your calculation notebook," Martinez suggested. Tiffany hesitated for a moment, then handed over her notebook. Collins flipped through pages of detailed mathematical analyses, his expression changing as he recognized the sophistication of her work. These weren't routine equipment calculations. They were advanced ballistic studies that incorporated factors most military personnel never considered. "This is professional-grade analysis," Collins said after several minutes of review. "You've been calculating solutions for scenarios that push beyond current military doctrine. Why haven't you been working in ballistic support roles?" "Nobody's ever asked," Tiffany replied simply. "I'm equipment maintenance. People assume I just clean scopes and check zero settings." Collins closed the notebook and studied Tiffany with new respect. "Specialist Brooks, I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before answering. Would you be interested in consulting on some advanced ballistic projects? Theoretical work that pushes the boundaries of current capabilities?" Tiffany felt her heart rate increase. For 2 years, she had been relegated to routine maintenance tasks while possessing knowledge and skills that went far beyond her assigned role. The possibility of working on challenging theoretical problems was exactly what she had hoped for, but never expected. "What kind of projects?" she asked. Collins gestured toward the equipment surrounding them. "We're developing capabilities for extreme precision shooting, scenarios that require mathematical accuracy beyond current training standards, environmental prediction, trajectory modeling, equipment optimization, the kind of work that requires someone who understands systems at the component level." "That sounds exactly like what I've been studying," Tiffany admitted. "I've been working on atmospheric modeling and ballistic prediction as personal projects. The mathematics are fascinating once you account for all the variables." Collins made a decision. "Martinez, can you spare Brooks for the afternoon? I'd like to see what she can do with some real-world problems." Martinez nodded. "She's all yours, Master Sergeant. But don't underestimate her because of the glasses and quiet demeanor. She sees things other people miss." For the next 4 hours, Tiffany found herself immersed in advanced ballistic analysis unlike anything she had encountered in her regular duties. Collins presented her with scenarios that required sophisticated mathematical modeling, shots at extreme range through varying atmospheric conditions, environmental factors that changed during bullet flight time, equipment limitations that had to be overcome through calculation rather than technology. Each problem challenged her analytical abilities in new ways. She found herself drawing on knowledge from multiple sources: atmospheric physics, optical theory, materials science, mathematical modeling. synthesizing information into solutions that surprised even Collins with their elegance and precision. "Brooks, look at this problem," Collins said, pulling up a particularly challenging scenario on his computer. "Target at 2,800 meters. Environmental conditions that include significant temperature differential between shooting position and target elevation, crosswind that varies with altitude, and time constraints that limit atmospheric monitoring opportunities." Tiffany studied the data, her mind automatically organizing the complex variables into manageable mathematical relationships. She began filling another whiteboard with calculations, working through atmospheric modeling, trajectory prediction, and environmental compensation with systematic precision. Primary solution requires accounting for thermal stratification in the lower atmosphere, she said, working through the mathematics. The temperature differential creates density layers that affect bullet trajectory differently at various points during flight. You need to model the trajectory as passing through discrete atmospheric zones, each with its own ballistic characteristics. Collins followed her calculations with growing amazement. "You're treating the bullet path as moving through multiple ballistic environments rather than one uniform atmosphere?" "Exactly. At extreme range, the assumption of uniform atmospheric conditions becomes mathematically invalid. The bullet experiences different air density, temperature, and pressure at different points during its trajectory. If you don't account for these variations, your calculations will be systematically incorrect." Tiffany completed her analysis and stepped back from the whiteboard. The mathematical solution was complex but elegant, incorporating atmospheric variables that most ballistic programs ignored or simplified. Collins compared Tiffany's calculations to his computer-generated solutions, noting significant differences in the final firing data. "Your approach gives substantially different results than standard ballistic programs. How confident are you in these calculations?" "The mathematics are sound," Tiffany replied, adjusting her glasses with unconscious habit. "But mathematical models are only as good as their underlying assumptions. The only way to verify accuracy is through field testing." Collins studied Tiffany with calculating eyes. "What if I told you we could arrange field testing? Would you be interested in seeing whether your theoretical calculations translate to real-world accuracy?" Tiffany felt a surge of excitement mixed with apprehension. Her calculations had always been theoretical exercises, mathematical models that existed only on paper. The possibility of testing them in actual shooting scenarios was both thrilling and terrifying. "What kind of field testing?" she asked. "Precision shooting at extended range. Using your calculations to attempt shots that push beyond current training standards. Real rifles, real ammunition, real environmental conditions." Collins paused, studying her reaction. "Real pressure to perform under conditions that matter." Tiffany thought about the years she had spent calculating theoretical solutions, understanding ballistic systems at the mathematical level, developing expertise that nobody had ever asked her to demonstrate. The opportunity to prove that her analytical approach could translate into practical results was exactly what she had been preparing for, without knowing it. "I'd like to try," she said quietly. "But I should probably mention that I've never attempted precision shooting beyond standard qualification distances." Collins smiled. "That might actually be an advantage. You won't have preconceptions about what's possible or impossible. You'll approach each shot as a mathematical problem to be solved." Martinez, who had been observing the interaction, stepped forward. "Brooks, what Master Sergeant Collins is offering you is an opportunity to prove that your analytical abilities have practical value. Are you ready for that kind of challenge?" Tiffany looked around the ballistics laboratory, at the advanced equipment and sophisticated analysis tools, at the mathematical problems that pushed beyond routine military applications. For the first time in her military career, she was being offered the chance to use her abilities at their full potential. "Yes," she said, pushing her reading glasses up her nose with determination. "I'm ready." Collins nodded approvingly. "Outstanding. We'll start tomorrow morning at the extended range facility. Bring your notebook and your calculations. It's time to find out whether mathematics can overcome the limitations that have kept precision shooting from reaching its full potential." As they prepared to leave the laboratory, Martinez placed a hand on Tiffany's shoulder.
Brooks, you're about to discover what you're really capable of. Those glasses that everyone thinks make you weak, they're going to become your greatest asset." That evening, Tiffany sat in her barracks room, reviewing her notebook and preparing for the challenge ahead. Tomorrow, she would find out whether years of theoretical study could translate into practical marksmanship. Her reading glasses reflected the overhead light as she worked, the same glasses that had marked her as different, weak, unsuited for combat roles. But now she was beginning to understand that being different might be exactly what was needed. The extended range facility at Fort Henderson existed in a different world from the standard marksmanship training areas. Located 15 miles from the main base, it stretched across a desert valley that provided unobstructed sightlines to targets positioned at distances most soldiers never attempted. Tiffany arrived at 0600 hours to find Master Sergeant Collins already setting up equipment that looked more like scientific instruments than military hardware. "You're early," Collins observed, not looking up from the ballistic computer he was calibrating. "Good trait for precision work. Most people think long-range shooting is about pulling triggers. Reality is about preparation and attention to detail." Tiffany adjusted her reading glasses against the morning glare and approached the shooting position. The rifle system Collins had selected was unlike anything she'd worked with during equipment maintenance, a custom-built precision platform that radiated technical sophistication. Every component appeared to be optimized for accuracy rather than durability or cost considerations. "What am I looking at?" she asked, running her eyes over the weapon system with the analytical approach she applied to all technical equipment. Collins finished his computer calibration and joined her behind the rifle. Custom Remington 700 action, Krieger barrel chambered in 30-aught Winchester, Macmillan A5 stock, and a Schmidt & Bender scope that costs more than most people make in 6 months. Everything on this rifle is designed for one purpose: putting bullets exactly where the mathematics say they should go. Tiffany knelt beside the rifle, immediately recognizing components she'd maintained in the armory but had never seen assembled in such an optimal configuration. The scope was familiar. She'd serviced dozens of Schmidt & Bender units, but this one incorporated modifications and accessories that transformed it from standard military equipment into a precision instrument. "The scope has custom turrets," she observed, noting the non-standard markings on the adjustment mechanisms. "These aren't calibrated for standard military loads." "Exactly right," Collins confirmed. "The turret markings are calibrated for the specific ammunition we'll be using, accounting for ballistic coefficient, muzzle velocity, and atmospheric conditions specific to this location. Its precision shooting is taken to the component level." Collins handed Tiffany a box of ammunition that looked different from standard military rounds. The cartridges were visibly more precise in their construction, with cases that showed perfect uniformity and bullets that appeared to be manufactured to tolerances she'd only seen in competition ammunition.
Federal Gold Medal Match, 175-grain Sierra Match King bullets, Collins explained. Muzzle velocity of approximately 2,600 feet per second, ballistic coefficient of 0.496. Every round in this box has been weight sorted and measured for consistency. No variables we can control have been left to chance. Tiffany examined the ammunition with her equipment specialist's eye, noting the precision manufacturing that eliminated the variations she'd observed in standard military rounds. "What's our first target distance?" Collins pointed across the valley to a target barely visible in the distance, 800 meters. Not extreme range by special operations standards, but far enough to separate mathematical precision from lucky shooting. Tiffany opened her notebook and began the familiar process of ballistic calculation, but now with the pressure of knowing her mathematics would be tested in reality rather than theoretical exercises. Environmental conditions needed to be measured and factored into trajectory predictions. Atmospheric pressure, temperature, humidity, wind speed, and direction, all variables that would affect bullet flight over 800 meters. "What's your atmospheric data?" she asked, pulling out the handheld weather monitor she'd borrowed from the armory's equipment inventory. Collins activated a sophisticated weather station that provided real-time environmental monitoring. Temperature, 72 degrees Fahrenheit, barometric pressure, 29.87 inches, humidity, 34%, wind speed, 8 knots from 270 degrees. Tiffany worked through the trajectory calculations with systematic precision, accounting for bullet drop, wind drift,
atmospheric effects, and scope adjustments needed to place the bullet on target. Her mathematical approach was methodical and thorough, incorporating factors that most shooters either ignored or estimated. Primary solution requires up to 19.2 MOA for bullet drop compensation. Left 2.8 MOA for wind drift correction, she announced after several minutes of calculation. Atmospheric conditions are stable enough that environmental compensation should remain consistent during bullet flight time. Collins compared Tiffany's hand-calculated solution to the output from his ballistic computer, noting slight but significant differences. Your calculations give different results than the computer program. Which approach do you trust more? Mine, Tiffany replied without hesitation. Computer programs use generalized atmospheric models that don't account for local environmental conditions. My calculations incorporate actual measured data from this specific location under current conditions. Collins made the scope adjustments according to Tiffany's calculations, transforming her mathematical theory into mechanical reality. The precision turrets clicked into position with satisfying accuracy, each adjustment representing exactly the compensation her mathematics had predicted. Target is an 8-inch circle at 800 meters, Collins said, settling behind the rifle. In precision shooting, we're not looking for hits, we're looking for groups. Consistency matters more than individual shot placement. Collins fired 5 rounds in rapid succession, each shot executed with the mechanical precision of an experienced marksman. Through the spotting scope, Tiffany could see the bullet impacts clustered tightly around the target's center, forming a group that measured less than 4 inches across. Outstanding shooting, she observed, impressed by the consistency of Collins' marksmanship. Outstanding mathematics, Collins corrected. The rifle and ammunition are capable of much better precision than that. The limiting factor was my ability to execute consistently. Your calculations put every shot into the scoring area. Collins made notes in his shooting log, documenting the atmospheric conditions, ammunition performance, and accuracy results. Brooks, that was mathematical precision translated into practical marksmanship. Ready to try it yourself? Tiffany felt her heart rate increase. She'd qualified as an expert with standard military weapons, but this represented a different level of precision shooting entirely. The equipment was more sophisticated, the distance was greater, and the expectations were higher than anything she'd experienced. I've never shot at this distance before, she admitted. That might be an advantage, Collins replied. You won't have preconceptions about what's difficult or what's possible. You'll approach each shot as a mathematical problem with a ballistic solution. Tiffany settled behind the rifle, feeling the unfamiliar weight and balance of precision equipment designed for accuracy rather than combat durability. The scope picture was crystal clear, revealing target details that would have been invisible with standard military optics. Breathe naturally, find your respiratory pause, let the crosshairs settle, coached Collins. At this distance, technique matters more than strength or aggression. Precision shooting is about mechanical consistency and mathematical accuracy. Tiffany controlled her breathing and found the natural pause that provided maximum stability. Through her reading glasses and the rifle scope, she could see the target clearly, an 8-inch circle that represented the culmination of her mathematical calculations. The trigger broke cleanly, surprising her with its precision. The rifle's recoil was substantial but manageable, and she maintained sight picture long enough to observe bullet traces through the scope. Hit, Collins called through his spotting scope. Center mass, excellent shot for your first attempt at this distance. Tiffany felt a surge of satisfaction mixed with surprise. The mathematics had worked exactly as predicted. Her theoretical calculations had translated into practical marksmanship with mechanical precision. The rifle makes it easier, she said, saving the weapon and stepping back from the shooting position. The rifle makes precision possible, Collins corrected. You made the shot. The mathematical analysis, the environmental compensation, the ballistic prediction, that was all your work. Collins had Tiffany fire 4 additional rounds, coaching her through the mental and physical aspects of precision shooting, while relying on her mathematics expertise for ballistic solutions. Brooks, what you just demonstrated goes beyond routine marksmanship, Collins said as they secured the equipment. Your mathematical approach to ballistic problems is more sophisticated than computer programs that cost tens of thousands of dollars. Tiffany cleaned her reading glasses, a nervous habit that had developed over years of detailed technical work. What happens next? Collins studied her with calculating eyes. Next, we find out what you're really capable of. How do you feel about attempting shots at distances that push beyond standard military training? How much further? Tiffany asked, though her analytical mind was already anticipating the challenge.
1,200 meters. Environmental conditions that require real-time atmospheric monitoring. Mathematical complexity that separates theoretical knowledge from practical application. Collins paused, gauging her reaction. Pressure that tests whether you can execute under conditions that matter. Tiffany thought about the satisfaction she'd felt making her first precision shots at 800 meters, the way her theoretical knowledge had translated into practical results. The opportunity to push further, to test her analytical abilities against more challenging scenarios, was exactly what she'd been hoping for. "I'd like to try," she said. Over the following weeks, Collins introduced Tiffany to progressively more challenging shooting scenarios. 1,200 meters in variable wind conditions. 1,500 meters with temperature differentials that affected atmospheric density. 1,800 meters where environmental factors changed during bullet flight time. Each distance required increasingly sophisticated mathematical analysis. Tiffany found herself developing calculation techniques that went beyond anything she'd learned from books or online resources. She was creating new methods for atmospheric modeling, environmental prediction, and ballistic compensation that accounted for factors most shooters never considered. "Brooks, your mathematical approach is becoming something unique," Collins observed after watching her work through a particularly complex trajectory calculation. "You're not just using existing ballistic theory, you're developing new analytical methods." At 1,800 meters, Tiffany discovered that her reading glasses provided an unexpected advantage. The same near vision that had made her exceptional at equipment maintenance allowed her to see environmental indicators that other shooters missed. Heat mirage patterns that revealed wind conditions, atmospheric disturbances that predicted environmental changes, subtle optical effects that provided information about air density and temperature gradients. "Your glasses aren't a weakness," Collins realized during one training session. "They're giving you access to environmental information that most people can't perceive. You're reading atmospheric conditions through visual cues that other shooters ignore." Tiffany had never considered her vision as an asset rather than a limitation. Throughout her military career, her reading glasses had been a source of embarrassment and a symbol of physical inadequacy. But in precision shooting, her exceptional near vision was becoming a tactical advantage. "I can see wind patterns in the mirage," she admitted. "Temperature gradients show up as optical distortions. Atmospheric density changes create visual effects that predict environmental shifts." Collins made detailed notes in his training log. "Brooks, what you're describing is environmental prediction through optical analysis. Most shooters use instruments to measure atmospheric conditions. You're reading them directly through visual observation." After 6 weeks of intensive training, Tiffany had progressed from routine equipment maintenance to precision shooting capabilities that impressed even Collins. Her mathematical approach, combined with her exceptional near vision and analytical mindset, was producing accuracy results that challenged conventional understanding of what was possible. "Tomorrow, we're going to test your capabilities under operational conditions," Collins announced. "Real mission scenario, time pressure, environmental challenges that can't be controlled or predicted." Tiffany adjusted her reading glasses and looked across the desert valley where she'd spent weeks developing skills she never knew she possessed. "What kind of operational conditions?" Collins smiled. "The kind that separates mathematical theory from practical capability. Are you ready to find out what you're really made of?" That evening, Tiffany sat in her barracks room, reviewing 6 weeks of training notes and calculation sheets. Her notebook had evolved from routine equipment maintenance records into a comprehensive ballistic reference that covered scenarios she'd never imagined attempting. Tomorrow would determine whether her transformation from equipment specialist to precision marksman was complete, or whether she would discover limitations that theory couldn't overcome. Her reading glasses reflected the overhead light as she prepared for the most significant challenge of her military career. The briefing room at 0530 hours contained only 3 people, but the atmosphere was charged with the intensity that surrounded classified operations. Tiffany sat across from Collins and a woman she'd never seen before, a captain whose bearing and demeanor immediately suggested intelligence operations.
"Specialist Brooks," the captain began without preamble. "I'm Captain Sarah Mitchell from the 75th Ranger Regiment. Master Sergeant Collins has been providing some interesting reports about your analytical capabilities." Tiffany adjusted her reading glasses, unsure how to respond to praise from an officer she didn't recognize. Over the past 6 weeks, she'd grown accustomed to Collins's direct approach to training, but formal military briefings still made her nervous. "Yes, ma'am," she replied simply. Captain Mitchell activated a wall display showing satellite imagery of mountainous terrain that looked nothing like the familiar desert environment of Fort Henderson. 48 hours ago, intelligence assets identified a high-value target in the Kandahar province of Afghanistan. Taliban commander responsible for coordinating IED attacks against coalition forces. The display shifted to show detailed topographical maps with elevation markers and distance calculations. Tiffany's analytical mind automatically began processing the tactical geometry, identifying potential sightlines and calculating preliminary ranges. The display shifted to show detailed topographical maps with elevation markers and distance calculations. Tiffany's analytical mind automatically began processing the tactical geometry, identifying potential sightlines and calculating preliminary ranges. The display quickly shifted to show detailed topographical maps with elevation markers and distance calculations. Tiffany's analytical mind automatically began processing the tactical geometry, identifying potential sightlines and calculating preliminary ranges. The display quickly shifted to show detailed topographical maps with elevation markers and distance calculations. Tiffany's analytical mind automatically began processing the tactical geometry, identifying potential sightlines and calculating preliminary ranges. The display quickly shifted to show detailed topographical maps with elevation markers and distance calculations. Tiffany's analytical mind automatically began processing the tactical geometry, identifying potential sightlines and calculating preliminary ranges. The display quickly shifted to show detailed topographical maps with elevation markers and distance calculations. Tiffany's analytical mind automatically began processing the tactical geometry, identifying potential sightlines and calculating preliminary ranges. The display quickly shifted to show detailed topographical maps with elevation markers and distance calculations. Tiffany's analytical mind automatically began processing the tactical geometry, identifying potential sightlines and calculating preliminary ranges. The display quickly shifted to show detailed topographical maps with elevation markers and distance calculations. Tiffany's analytical mind automatically began processing the tactical geometry, identifying potential sightlines and calculating preliminary ranges. The display quickly shifted to show detailed topographical maps with elevation markers and distance calculations. Tiffany's analytical mind automatically began processing the tactical geometry, identifying potential sightlines and calculating preliminary ranges. The display quickly shifted to show detailed topographical maps with elevation markers and distance calculations. Tiffany's analytical mind automatically began processing the tactical geometry, identifying potential sightlines and calculating preliminary ranges. The display quickly shifted to show detailed topographical maps with elevation markers and distance calculations. Tiffany's analytical mind automatically began processing the tactical geometry, identifying potential sightlines and calculating preliminary ranges. The display quickly shifted to show detailed topographical maps with elevation markers and distance calculations. Tiffany's analytical mind automatically began processing the tactical geometry, identifying potential sightlines and calculating preliminary ranges. The display quickly shifted to show detailed topographical maps with elevation markers and distance calculations. Tiffany's analytical mind automatically began processing the tactical geometry, identifying potential sightlines and calculating preliminary ranges. The display quickly shifted to show detailed topographical maps with elevation markers and distance calculations. Tiffany's analytical mind automatically began processing the tactical geometry, identifying potential sightlines and calculating preliminary ranges. The display quickly shifted to show detailed topographical maps with elevation markers and distance calculations. Tiffany's analytical mind automatically began processing the tactical geometry, identifying potential sightlines and calculating preliminary ranges. The display quickly shifted to show detailed topographical maps with elevation markers and distance calculations. Tiffany's analytical mind automatically began processing the tactical geometry, I then shot with a ballistic solution.
Tiffany opened her notebook and began preliminary calculations based on the mission parameters. Distance, altitude, environmental factors, all variables that required mathematical analysis before tactical execution became possible. "What's the timeline?" she asked. 72 hours, Mitchell replied. "Transport to Afghanistan, movement to shooting position, mission execution, and extraction. No room for extended preparation or multiple attempts." Collins activated additional displays showing equipment specifications and ammunition data. Custom rifle system optimized for extreme range, hand-loaded ammunition matched for consistency, atmospheric monitoring equipment for real-time environmental analysis. Tiffany studied the technical specifications with her equipment specialist's eye, noting modifications and optimizations that pushed beyond standard military hardware. Everything about the mission package suggested capabilities designed for scenarios that existed at the edge of possibility. "What about backup plans?" she asked. At that distance, environmental factors could make the shot impossible regardless of mathematical precision. Captain Mitchell nodded approvingly. "Exactly the kind of thinking we need. There is no backup plan, Brooks. If precision shooting can't solve this problem, the target escapes and American soldiers die." The weight of responsibility settled on Tiffany's shoulders with crushing intensity. Her theoretical calculations and training exercises were about to become matters of life and death at distances that challenged the limits of human capability. "I need detailed environmental data from the target area," she said, falling back on technical requirements to manage the stress. Atmospheric conditions, altitude effects, temperature patterns, wind characteristics, everything that could affect ballistic performance. Collins handed her a classified folder containing meteorological data, satellite atmospheric analysis, and environmental predictions for the target region. Everything intelligence could provide, but real-time conditions will determine actual shooting parameters. Tiffany spent the next several hours immersed in mission planning that went far beyond anything she'd experienced during training. The mathematical complexity was staggering. Altitude effects that changed atmospheric density, temperature gradients that affected bullet trajectory, wind patterns that varied with terrain features and time of day. Her notebook filled with calculations that covered every environmental scenario intelligence could predict. Primary solutions for optimal conditions, backup calculations for atmospheric variations, contingency plans for environmental factors that could change during bullet flight time. "Brooks, your mission analysis is more comprehensive than computer programs that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars," Collins observed, reviewing her mathematical work. "You're accounting for variables that most ballistic systems ignore completely." That evening, Tiffany found herself on a military transport aircraft bound for Bagram Air Base, surrounded by special operations personnel who treated the mission with professional seriousness but without the overwhelming stress she was experiencing. For them, high-risk operations were routine. For her, this represented a complete transformation from equipment maintenance to combat operations. Collins sat beside her during the long flight, providing final coaching on environmental prediction and stress management. "Brooks, everything you've learned over the past 6 weeks has prepared you for this moment. The mathematics are sound, the equipment is optimized, the intelligence is current." "What if I miss?" Tiffany asked quietly, voicing the fear that had been building since the mission briefing. "Then you miss," Collins replied simply. "But missing isn't failure if you execute properly. The only failure would be not taking the shot when you have the capability to succeed." The insertion into Afghanistan was conducted with special operations efficiency that impressed Tiffany despite her nervousness. Helicopter transport to a forward operating base, ground movement through terrain that required tactical awareness she'd never needed during equipment maintenance, establishment of a shooting position that transformed her from support personnel into a combat operator. The shooting position overlooked a valley that stretched towards mountains barely visible in the distance. Somewhere among those peaks, 2,847 meters away, was a target whose elimination could save American lives.
The mathematical challenge was staggering, but Tiffany had spent weeks preparing for exactly this scenario. Environmental conditions are challenging, Collins reported, monitoring atmospheric data through sophisticated equipment that provided real-time updates. The temperature differential between shooting position and target elevation is significant. Wind patterns show complexity that will require continuous monitoring. Tiffany assembled her rifle system with the mechanical precision she developed through countless hours of training. Custom components fit together with perfect accuracy, transforming theoretical capability into practical readiness. Her reading glasses reflected the morning sun as she prepared for the most difficult shot of her life. Through the high-powered scope, she could barely make out the target compound in the distance. At maximum magnification, structural details were visible, but human targets would require thermal imaging and careful observation to identify. Environmental conditions created heat mirage that distorted visual references, making target identification challenging despite sophisticated optics. Atmospheric monitoring shows wind conditions that change with altitude, she reported, working through environmental calculations that incorporated factors most shooters never considered. Collins confirmed her atmospheric analysis through his own instrumentation. Your atmospheric modeling matches our technical data exactly. Conditions are challenging, but within the parameters you've calculated for. Tiffany opened her notebook to the mission-specific calculations she'd prepared during the flight to Afghanistan. Primary solution for current environmental conditions, backup plans for atmospheric variations, contingency calculations for factors that could change during the extended bullet flight time required for such an extreme shot. Primary solution requires up to 287.4 MOA elevation, left 43.7 MOA windage correction, she announced after working through the complex mathematics. Atmospheric conditions suggest bullet flight time of approximately 4.2 seconds, long enough for environmental changes to affect trajectory. Collins made the scope adjustments according to Tiffany's calculations. Each click of the precision turrets representing mathematical theory transformed into mechanical reality. At 2,847 meters, the margin for error was measured in inches rather than feet, requiring absolute precision in every aspect of shot execution. Target movement detected, Collins reported through his spotting scope. Single individual matching intelligence profile, positioned for approximately 90 seconds. Tiffany settled behind her rifle, feeling the familiar weight of precision equipment despite the unfamiliar stress of combat operations. Through her scope, enhanced by thermal imaging, she could see a human heat signal at the target compound, barely visible at such extreme range, but identifiable through the sophisticated optics.
Her reading glasses, once a source of embarrassment, now provided crucial advantages in reading environmental conditions that would affect her shot. Heat mirage patterns revealed wind conditions, atmospheric distortions indicated temperature gradients, optical effects that other shooters would miss entirely. Environmental conditions remain within calculated parameters, she reported, monitoring atmospheric indicators through visual observation enhanced by her exceptional near vision. Wind patterns show consistency that should maintain ballistic predictions. Collins provided final confirmation of target identification and environmental conditions. Confirmed target, atmospheric conditions stable, you are cleared to engage. Tiffany controlled her breathing with mechanical precision, finding the natural respiratory pause that provided maximum stability. At 2,847 meters, even her heartbeat could affect accuracy, requiring physical control that went beyond routine marksmanship. The crosshairs settled on her calculated point of aim, not directly on the target, but offset to account for massive bullet drop and complex wind conditions that would affect the projectile during its 4.2-second journey across nearly 3 miles of challenging terrain. Her finger found the trigger, applying first-stage pressure while maintaining absolute sight picture stability. This was the moment that would determine whether months of training and mathematical preparation could overcome the limitations that had kept precision shooting from reaching its full potential. The mathematics were perfect, the equipment was optimized, the environmental conditions were within predicted parameters.
Everything that could be controlled had been prepared with systematic precision. Tiffany Brooks, the equipment specialist with reading glasses who had been dismissed as unsuited for combat operations, took a deep breath and prepared to demonstrate that analytical expertise could achieve what conventional training thought impossible. The rifle's thunderous report echoed across the Afghan mountainside like the crack of divine judgment. Tiffany rode the massive recoil, her reading glasses sliding slightly down her nose as she maintained sight picture through the high-powered scope. At 2,847 meters, bullet flight time would be 4.2 seconds, an eternity in combat operations where everything could change in an instant. Good trace, tracking on calculated trajectory, Collins called through his spotting scope, following the projectile's path across nearly 3 miles of mountain terrain. Environmental compensation appears correct. Tiffany counted the seconds in her mind, calculating the bullet's progress against atmospheric conditions that could shift during flight. 1 second. Projectile clearing the first 1,000 meters, maintaining velocity and trajectory according to her mathematical predictions. 2 seconds. Bullet encountering the temperature gradient she'd calculated for, atmospheric density changes affecting ballistic performance exactly as her models had predicted. 3 seconds. The point where most long-range shots began to lose accuracy due to environmental factors beyond human prediction. But Tiffany's calculations had accounted for atmospheric layers, temperature differentials, and wind shear that conventional ballistic programs ignored entirely. 4 seconds. Bullet entering the final phase of its journey, gravity and air resistance combining every aspect of her mathematical analysis. Through her scope, she could still see the thermal signature at the target compound, unaware that death was approaching at supersonic velocity. Impact! Collins shouted suddenly. Confirmed hit, target down at 2,800 meters. Tiffany sat back from her rifle, her hands trembling with adrenaline and disbelief. She had just accomplished something that existed at the absolute edge of human capability, a precision shot that validated years of mathematical study and challenged conventional understanding of what was possible in military operations. Through her scope, she could see the disruption at the target compound where her bullet had found its mark with lethal accuracy. The Taliban commander, whose elimination could save American lives, was neutralized by a single shot from an equipment specialist wearing reading glasses who 6 months earlier had been cleaning scopes in an armory. "Outstanding work, Brooks," Collins said quietly, making detailed notes in his mission log. That was mathematical precision translated into tactical reality under combat conditions. The extraction was conducted with special operations efficiency, but Tiffany barely registered the helicopter flight back to Bagram Air Base. Her mind was processing the magnitude of what she'd accomplished, not just the successful mission, but the validation of an analytical approach that had transformed her from support personnel into a precision instrument of military policy. "How do you feel?" Collins asked during the flight. Tiffany considered the question carefully, adjusting her reading glasses as she watched the Afghan landscape passing below. Like mathematics working exactly as they should, every calculation, every environmental factor, every equipment optimization, they all came together at the moment when precision mattered most. Back at Bagram, the mission debrief was attended by officers whose rank insignia suggested involvement in classified operations at the highest levels. Colonel David Peterson, a lean man whose bearing screamed Special Operations Command, studied Tiffany with the kind of professional interest reserved for exceptional capabilities. "Specialist Brooks, your shot has been confirmed at 2,800 meters under challenging environmental conditions," Colonel Peterson began. "This establishes a new benchmark for precision shooting in combat operations. More importantly, it demonstrates analytical capabilities that could revolutionize how we approach long-range tactical problems." Tiffany felt the weight of attention from officers who understood the significance of what she'd accomplished. Her transformation from invisible equipment specialist to record-holding precision marksman was complete, but she sensed this was only the beginning of something larger. "Sir, mathematics made it possible," she replied. "Everything else was just execution according to calculated parameters." Peterson made notes on his tablet, clearly recognizing that Tiffany's systematic approach represented something unique in military capabilities. Brooks, your analytical methods produced accuracy results that challenge our understanding of what's achievable with precision weapons. How would you feel about sharing those methods with other personnel? The question surprised Tiffany. For years, her mathematical approach had been a personal interest, technical knowledge that nobody had valued or requested. The possibility of teaching her analytical methods to other military personnel was both exciting and daunting. "What kind of teaching, sir?" "Advanced ballistic analysis," Peterson explained, "training programs that could develop similar analytical capabilities in selected personnel. Your mathematical approach could become the foundation for precision shooting capabilities that serve strategic military interests."
Collins spoke up from his position near the briefing displays. "Sir, Brooks' methods go beyond conventional ballistic theory. She's developed new approaches to atmospheric modeling, environmental prediction, and equipment optimization that produce results superior to computer programs costing hundreds of thousands of dollars." Peterson studied Tiffany with calculating eyes. "Brooks, are you interested in developing training curricula that could transform how military personnel approach precision shooting, moving beyond traditional marksmanship to analytical precision that maximizes equipment capabilities?" Tiffany thought about the satisfaction she'd felt solving complex ballistic problems, the way mathematical understanding had unlocked capabilities she'd never imagined possessing. The opportunity to share that knowledge with others who could benefit from analytical approaches was exactly what she'd hoped for. "Yes, sir, I'd like to try." The weeks following her return to Fort Henderson were unlike anything Tiffany had experienced in her military career. Instead of returning to routine equipment maintenance, she found herself assigned to a classified program developing advanced precision shooting capabilities. Her small office in the Special Operations Training Center was equipped with computers, ballistic software, and reference materials that supported the kind of analytical work she'd been doing as personal projects. Her first student was Staff Sergeant Michael Rodriguez, an experienced sniper from the 1st Special Forces Group whose conventional training had prepared him for precision shooting out to 1,200 meters. Rodriguez approached Tiffany's analytical methods with professional skepticism mixed with genuine curiosity about techniques that had produced unprecedented results. "Ma'am, I've been shooting long range for 8 years," Rodriguez said during their first training session. "I understand holdovers, wind calls, and environmental factors. What exactly are you going to teach me that I don't already know?" Tiffany opened her notebook to atmospheric modeling calculations that covered environmental factors Rodriguez had never considered. "How do you account for temperature gradients between shooting position and target elevation?" Rodriguez studied her mathematical work with growing interest. "We use average atmospheric conditions for the entire shot distance." "That approach works for shorter ranges," Tiffany explained, filling a whiteboard with calculations, "but at extreme distances, the bullet passes through multiple atmospheric zones. Temperature, pressure, and humidity can vary significantly along the trajectory path. If you don't model these variations, your ballistic predictions become systematically incorrect." Over the following hours, Tiffany walked Rodriguez through atmospheric modeling techniques that incorporated factors his previous training had ignored. Environmental prediction through visual observation, mathematical analysis of ballistic performance under varying conditions, equipment optimization that maximized precision capabilities. "This is professional-grade ballistic analysis," Rodriguez admitted after working through several calculation exercises. "You're treating long-range shooting as applied physics rather than traditional marksmanship." "Exactly," Tiffany confirmed. "At extreme ranges, success depends more on mathematical accuracy than shooting technique. The rifle and ammunition will perform according to physical laws. Your job is to calculate those laws correctly."
Rodriguez's progress was rapid and impressive. Within 2 weeks, he was calculating ballistic solutions that matched Tiffany's analytical accuracy and executing shots at ranges that pushed beyond his previous capabilities. His conventional sniper training provided the marksmanship foundation, while Tiffany's mathematical methods unlocked precision he'd never achieved. "Brooks, your teaching methods are producing results I didn't think were possible," Rodriguez said, after successfully engaging targets at 2,200 meters. "I'm calculating solutions and making shots that would have been impossible with conventional training." Word of Tiffany's teaching success spread through special operations communities with the speed that accompanied exceptional capabilities. Within a month, she had requests from multiple military units seeking advanced precision shooting training that incorporated her analytical methods. Captain Mitchell visited Tiffany's office 6 weeks after the Afghanistan mission, carrying orders that would change her military career permanently. "Brooks, your analytical capabilities have attracted attention from personnel who make decisions about strategic military priorities. How would you feel about expanding your training program to serve national security interests?" Tiffany looked around her office, filled with ballistic calculations and training materials that represented the transformation of her mathematical interests into military capabilities. "What kind of expansion, ma'am?" "Permanent assignment to develop precision shooting programs that incorporate your analytical methods, training selected personnel to achieve capabilities similar to what you demonstrated in Afghanistan, building systematic approaches that could serve American military interests for decades." The offer represented everything Tiffany had hoped for but never expected: the opportunity to use her analytical abilities at their full potential, teaching others to achieve precision that pushed beyond conventional limitations, contributing to military capabilities that could save American lives. "Yes, ma'am," she replied, "I'd like to make that contribution." Mitchell smiled with professional satisfaction. "Outstanding. Your new assignment comes with a promotion to sergeant and authorization to develop training curricula without conventional military restrictions. You'll have resources to push the boundaries of what's possible with precision shooting." That evening, Tiffany sat in her quarters, reviewing the extraordinary journey that had brought her from equipment maintenance to advanced ballistic analysis. Her reading glasses reflected the overhead light as she worked, the same glasses that had marked her as different, weak, unsuited for military combat roles. But now she understood that being different had been exactly what was needed. Her analytical approach to technical problems, her exceptional near vision for environmental observation, her mathematical understanding of ballistic systems, all capabilities that had been dismissed as academic rather than tactical, had combined to produce military effectiveness that challenged conventional understanding. Her notebook lay open beside her, filled with calculations and training methods that represented a new approach to precision shooting. Mathematical analysis that could transform how military personnel approach long-range tactical problems. Environmental prediction that maximized equipment capabilities. Systematic methods that turned theoretical knowledge into practical military advantage. 6 months ago, she had been invisible. Now she was developing capabilities that could influence military operations for generations. Her transformation was complete, but her mission was just beginning. Tomorrow, she would begin training the next generation of precision marksmen who would carry her analytical methods into military operations around the world. The mathematics that had always fascinated her had become the foundation for capabilities that serve American strategic interests at the highest levels.
Staff Sergeant Rodriguez knocked on her office door, carrying his own notebook filled with ballistic calculations. "Ma'am, I've been working on atmospheric modeling for extreme altitude conditions. Could you review my mathematical approach?" Tiffany smiled, recognizing in Rodriguez the same analytical curiosity that had driven her own development. "Absolutely. Show me what you've calculated." As Rodriguez spread his work across her desk, Tiffany realized that her greatest achievement might not be the record-breaking shots she'd made, but the analytical knowledge she was passing on to others who would push precision shooting even further beyond conventional limitations. Her reading glasses had become a symbol of capability rather than weakness, mathematical precision that could achieve what conventional training thought impossible. The girl who had been dismissed for taking too long cleaning scopes had become the teacher who could unlock human potential that others never knew existed. 9 months after her record-breaking shot in Afghanistan, Sergeant Tiffany Brooks stood before a classroom of 24 elite military personnel from across all service branches. Each student represented the top 1% of their respective sniper programs, operators with confirmed kills beyond 1,500 meters, competition shooters with national records, special operations veterans whose capabilities had been proven in the world's most challenging environments. Yet every one of them struggled with the mathematical concepts Tiffany was teaching. Atmospheric stratification at extreme range isn't theoretical, she explained, adjusting her reading glasses as she worked through calculations on the digital whiteboard. At 3,000 meters, your bullet passes through air masses with different temperature, pressure, and humidity characteristics. Treating the atmosphere as uniform will cause systematic errors in ballistic prediction. Gunnery Sergeant James Harrison, a Marine Corps sniper with 15 years of combat experience, raised his hand with obvious frustration. "Sergeant Brooks, I've made confirmed kills out to 2,100 meters using conventional wind calls and holdovers. Why do I need to learn atmospheric physics to be effective?" Tiffany had encountered this resistance before. Traditional snipers approached long-range shooting as an extension of marksmanship fundamentals: refined technique, practiced estimation, and experience-based adjustments. Her analytical approach challenged everything they'd learned about precision shooting. "Because conventional methods have physical limitations," she replied, pulling up ballistic data on the classroom displays. "Your longest confirmed engagement was 2,127 meters under ideal conditions. My analytical methods extend effective range to over 3,000 meters under challenging environmental factors. The mathematics unlock capabilities that experience alone cannot achieve." Harrison studied the comparative data with professional interest, despite his skepticism. "Show me." Over the following 3 hours, Tiffany walked the class through atmospheric modeling exercises that demonstrated the limitations of conventional ballistic prediction. Students calculated firing solutions using traditional methods, then recalculating using her environmental stratification techniques. The differences were dramatic. Traditional approaches produced solutions that would miss targets by several meters at extreme range, while her analytical methods delivered mathematical precision. "This is like learning ballistics from scratch," muttered Staff Sergeant Lisa Chen, an Army sniper whose expertise had earned her assignment to the most classified special operations units. "Everything I thought I knew about long-range shooting is being turned upside down." "Not turned upside down," Tiffany corrected. "Extended beyond conventional limitations. Your marksmanship fundamentals remain critical. Mathematical analysis just allows you to apply those fundamentals at ranges that were previously impossible." The Fort Henderson Advanced Precision Shooting Program had evolved far beyond Tiffany's initial teaching assignments. What began as individual instruction for selected personnel had expanded into a comprehensive training curriculum that attracted students from elite military units worldwide. The program's reputation was built on results that challenged conventional understanding of what was achievable with precision weapons. Colonel Peterson visited the classroom during an environmental prediction exercise, observing students who were learning to read atmospheric conditions through visual analysis rather than relying solely on instrumentation. His presence created the kind of tension that accompanied high-level scrutiny, but Tiffany had grown comfortable with command attention over the months since her program's establishment. "Sergeant Brooks, how are the students progressing?" Peterson asked quietly, positioning himself where he could observe without disrupting the instruction. "Ahead of projections, sir," Tiffany replied, watching her students work through complex atmospheric calculations. "Most are achieving precision at ranges that exceed their previous capabilities by 800 to 1,200 meters. The analytical approach is proving teachable and reproducible." Peterson made notes on his tablet, documenting progress that would be reported to military leaders whose decisions affect strategic capabilities. "Any students showing exceptional aptitude?" Tiffany glanced toward Staff Sergeant Chen, who was demonstrating atmospheric modeling techniques to other students with the kind of intuitive understanding that suggested natural analytical ability.
Several are developing expertise that could support advanced applications: environmental prediction, equipment optimization, ballistic theory that pushes beyond current doctrine, advanced applications, scenarios that require precision shooting at ranges approaching 4,000 meters, Tiffany explained, mathematical complexity that challenges the limits of human calculation, environmental factors that demand real-time atmospheric analysis, equipment capabilities that push beyond current technological boundaries. Peterson's expression grew serious. Are you suggesting that 4,000-meter precision shooting is achievable? The physics are sound, sir. Equipment exists that could support such ranges under optimal conditions. The limiting factors are human calculation capability and environmental prediction accuracy. Both problems are solvable through advanced analytical methods. That afternoon, Peterson convened a classified meeting with military personnel whose responsibilities included strategic capability development. Tiffany found herself briefing general officers and defense contractors about mathematical approaches that could extend precision shooting beyond all previous achievements. Sergeant Brooks, your program has produced measurable improvements in long-range marksmanship capabilities, General Patricia Hayes began, studying data that documented her students' progress. More importantly, your analytical methods appear to be scalable. How many personnel could potentially achieve these advanced capabilities? Tiffany considered the question carefully. Her teaching experience had revealed that mathematical precision shooting required specific aptitudes: analytical thinking, attention to detail, comfort with complex calculations under pressure. Not every skilled marksman possessed the combination of abilities necessary for extreme range operations. Approximately 1 in 50 experienced snipers show aptitude for advanced analytical methods, ma'am, she replied. But those who do develop capabilities that significantly exceed conventional training results, quality rather than quantity. General Hayes exchanged glances with other officers whose decisions shape military policy at the highest levels. What resources would you need to expand this program to serve strategic military requirements? Advanced training facilities, specialized equipment for extreme range operations, and selection criteria that identify personnel with analytical aptitudes, Tiffany responded. Also, research support to develop new calculation methods that push beyond current ballistic theory.
The meeting concluded with authorization for program expansion that exceeded Tiffany's most optimistic expectations. Funding for a dedicated training facility, equipment procurement that included custom rifle systems optimized for extreme range, and personnel assignments that would allow her to train instructors who could replicate her methods across multiple military units. 3 weeks later, construction began on the Advanced Ballistic Analysis Center, a specialized facility designed specifically for extreme-range precision shooting training. The complex included classrooms equipped with supercomputing capabilities for mathematical modeling, environmental simulation chambers that could replicate atmospheric conditions from around the world, and shooting ranges that extended to distances no military facility had previously attempted. Tiffany's responsibilities expanded to include curriculum development, instructor training, and research projects that pushed the boundaries of ballistic science. Her small office evolved into a technical center where military personnel and civilian scientists collaborated on problems that existed at the intersection of physics and warfare. "Brooks, what you've built here goes beyond military training," observed Dr. Robert Sullivan, a ballistic physicist from the Army Research Laboratory who had been assigned to support her program's theoretical development. "Your analytical methods are advancing the science of external ballistics in ways that could influence civilian applications as well." Tiffany reviewed mathematical models displayed on computer screens that surrounded her workspace, equations that described bullet flight characteristics under environmental conditions no previous researcher had attempted to analyze. The military applications drive the research, but the physics principles have broader implications. Dr. Sullivan activated additional displays showing ballistic calculations that incorporated atmospheric effects, equipment variables, and human factors with unprecedented sophistication. "Your environmental stratification models are being adopted by ballistic software companies. Mathematical approaches you developed for military precision shooting are influencing how civilian researchers approach long-range accuracy problems."
The recognition that her analytical methods had applications beyond military training was both satisfying and overwhelming. What had begun as personal interest in optical equipment maintenance had evolved into scientific contributions that influenced multiple fields of study. Dr. Sullivan, I'm curious about something, Tiffany said, adjusting her reading glasses as she studied ballistic data from her most advanced students. What do you think represents the absolute theoretical limit of precision shooting with current technology? Sullivan considered the question with the careful thought of a scientist whose career was built on understanding physical limitations. Under perfect conditions, optimal equipment, ideal atmospheric circumstances, flawless human execution, perhaps 4,500 meters. Beyond that, environmental variables become too complex for human calculation, and equipment limitations start to dominate accuracy factors. Tiffany made notes in her ever-present notebook, mathematical concepts that would form the basis for research projects pushing toward those theoretical limits. What if environmental factors could be predicted and calculated rather than estimated? That would require atmospheric modeling capabilities that don't currently exist, Sullivan replied. Real-time environmental analysis across distances measured in miles, accounting for factors that change during bullet flight time. The computational requirements would be enormous. But theoretically possible? Sullivan smiled, recognizing the analytical curiosity that had driven Tiffany's transformation from equipment specialist to the military's premier precision shooting theorist. With sufficient computational resources and advanced atmospheric sensors, yes, theoretically possible. That evening, Tiffany worked in her office long after normal duty hours, developing mathematical models for atmospheric prediction that could support precision shooting at ranges approaching the theoretical limits Dr. Sullivan had described. Her reading glasses reflected the glow from multiple computer displays as she pushed calculation methods beyond anything currently used in military applications. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez entered her office carrying coffee and his own notebook filled with advanced ballistic calculations. Over the months since becoming her first student, he had evolved into her primary teaching assistant, helping to train new classes while developing his own expertise in mathematical precision shooting. Ma'am, I've been working on environmental prediction algorithms that could support real-time ballistic calculation, Rodriguez said, spreading his work across her desk. Computational approaches that could handle atmospheric modeling for extreme-range applications. Tiffany reviewed his calculations with growing excitement. Rodriguez had developed programming techniques that could process environmental data in real time, adjusting ballistic predictions for atmospheric changes that occurred during extended bullet flight time. This could support precision shooting at ranges we haven't attempted, she realized. Mathematical modeling that accounts for environmental factors beyond human calculation capability. Rodriguez nodded. That's what I was thinking. Computer-assisted ballistic prediction that incorporates your atmospheric stratification methods with real-time environmental monitoring. Human expertise enhanced by computational capability. As they worked through the night developing hybrid approaches that combined human analytic expertise with computer processing power, Tiffany realized they were creating capabilities that could revolutionize precision shooting in ways that extended far beyond traditional military applications. Her journey from equipment maintenance to theoretical ballistics research was approaching achievements that would influence how human beings approached problems requiring extreme precision under challenging conditions. The mathematical methods she had developed were becoming tools that could unlock human potential in ways no one had previously imagined. The girl with reading glasses who had been dismissed as unsuited for military combat roles was building capabilities that would serve American strategic interests for generations while advancing scientific understanding of human performance under extreme conditions. 2 years after establishing the Advanced Ballistic Analysis Center, Master Sergeant Tiffany Brooks stood on the observation deck of the most sophisticated precision shooting facility in the world, watching her latest student attempt something that had never been accomplished in military history. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Nevada desert as Staff Sergeant Maria Santos prepared for a shot that would push beyond the theoretical limits of human capability. Environmental conditions are optimal, reported Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez, now serving as Tiffany's deputy director and the program's leading expert in computational ballistics. Temperature gradients minimal, wind patterns stable across all altitude levels, atmosphere density consistent within acceptable parameters. Through her reading glasses, Tiffany observed Santos settling behind a rifle system that represented the pinnacle of precision engineering. Custom manufactured components optimized for extreme range, computational ballistic assistance that processed environmental data in real time, and atmospheric monitoring equipment that provided unprecedented accuracy in environmental prediction. The target distance was 4,247 meters, over 2.6 miles, farther than any confirmed precision shot in military history. Final environmental check. Tiffany called through the communication system that connected the observation deck to the shooting position nearly half a mile away. Santos consulted the advanced atmospheric monitoring station that surrounded her shooting position, equipment that measured environmental conditions with scientific precision. Atmospheric modeling complete, ma'am. Computational ballistic solution confirmed. Environmental factors stable within predicted parameters.
Tiffany felt the familiar combination of excitement and apprehension that accompanied attempts to push beyond established boundaries. Over the past 2 years, her program had produced 17 graduates who could consistently engage targets beyond 3,000 meters, revolutionizing special operations capabilities and establishing new standards for precision shooting. But 4,247 meters represented something unprecedented. A shot that would validate theoretical calculations and demonstrate human potential that most experts considered impossible. "Santos, your ballistic solution?" Tiffany requested. "Primary solution requires up to 314.7 MOA elevation, left 52.3 MOA windage correction," Santos replied, her voice steady despite the magnitude of her attempt. "Computational modeling predicts bullet flight time of 5.1 seconds, accounting for atmospheric stratification and environmental gradients across the trajectory path." Rodriguez verified Santos's calculations against the facility's supercomputing ballistic models, noting the sophisticated analysis that incorporated factors no previous military training had addressed. Mathematical solution confirmed, environmental prediction within acceptable tolerance ranges. General Hayes, now serving as the commanding officer for all special operations training, observed from the facility's command center where military leaders and defense contractors gathered to witness capabilities that could influence strategic military policy. Her presence reflected the importance military leadership placed on Tiffany's program and its potential applications. "Sergeant Brooks, your students continue to achieve results that challenge our understanding of human capability," General Hayes observed. "This shot represents the culmination of analytical methods that have transformed precision shooting from art to science." Tiffany adjusted her reading glasses, a gesture that had evolved from nervous habit to confident preparation ritual. "Ma'am, mathematics supports success at this range. Equipment capabilities are adequate, environmental conditions are optimal, and Santos has demonstrated the analytical skills necessary for extreme range calculations." Through the facility's advanced observation systems, Tiffany could see Santos conducting final equipment checks with the systematic precision that characterized all graduates of her program. Every scope adjustment verified, every atmospheric reading confirmed, every ballistic calculation double-checked through computational assistance. "Target confirmation," Santos announced. "Thermal imaging shows clear target signature at 4,247 meters. Environmental conditions remain within calculated parameters." Tiffany opened her master notebook, now containing mathematical methods and training curricula that served as the foundation for precision shooting programs across all military branches. Her analytical approaches had been adopted by special operations units worldwide, influencing how elite military personnel approached problems requiring extreme accuracy under challenging conditions. "Santos, you are cleared for the attempt," Tiffany announced, authorizing a shot that would either establish a new benchmark for human precision or demonstrate the practical limits of mathematical analysis applied to ballistic problems. Santos settled behind her rifle with the mechanical precision that Tiffany's training program instilled in all students. Breathing control, environmental awareness, mathematical confidence in ballistic solutions, all capabilities that transformed precision shooting from intuitive skill to analytical science.
The rifle's report echoed across the Nevada desert like thunder, its advanced muzzle brake redirecting energy that would have been unmanageable with conventional equipment. Santos maintained sight picture through the extended recoil cycle, tracking her bullet's path across a distance that challenged the limits of visual observation. Tiffany counted the seconds with internal calculation, timing the bullet's progress against environmental factors that could affect accuracy during the extended flight time. 1 second, bullet maintaining velocity and trajectory according to mathematical models. 2 seconds, projectile encountering atmospheric gradients that her stratification models had predicted. 3 seconds, environmental factors remaining within calculated parameters. 4 seconds, the bullet entering the final trajectory phase, where gravitational effects and atmospheric resistance combine to challenge every aspect of Santos's mathematical analysis. 5 seconds, impact time approaching, success or failure determined by the accuracy of calculations that pushed beyond all previous human achievement. Impact confirmed, Rodriguez shouted suddenly. Direct hit at 4,247 meters. Target neutralized. The command center erupted in controlled celebration as military leaders and technical experts processed the significance of what they had witnessed. Santos had just achieved something that redefined human capability, demonstrating that analytical expertise could overcome limitations that conventional training considered absolute. General Hayes approached Tiffany with an expression of professional amazement mixed with strategic recognition. Sergeant Brooks, your student just established a world record that validates analytical methods your program has been developing. More importantly, she demonstrated capabilities that could serve strategic military interests in scenarios we haven't previously considered achievable. Tiffany felt the satisfaction of scientific validation combined with pride in Santos's achievement. 2 years of program development, mathematical innovation, and student training had culminated in a demonstration that analytical precision could achieve what conventional wisdom thought impossible. Ma'am, the success belongs to Santos and the analytical methods we've developed collaboratively. This represents systematic capability rather than individual achievement. Over the following hours, Santos's record-breaking shot was analyzed through multiple technical perspectives: ballistic performance, environmental factors, equipment capabilities, human factors, all aspects of the achievement documented for analysis that would influence military doctrine and technological development. Dr. Sullivan, whose ballistic physics research had supported the program's theoretical development, studied telemetry data that recorded every aspect of the bullet's 5.1-second journey across 4,247 meters of challenging terrain. Brooks, this shot validates mathematical models that push ballistic science into previously unexplored territory. Your atmospheric stratification methods predicted accuracy parameters that matched reality within measurement tolerances. Tiffany reviewed the comprehensive data analysis that documented Santos's achievement, noting how computational ballistic assistance had enhanced human analytical capability without replacing the fundamental mathematical understanding that made extreme precision possible. Dr. Sullivan, what do you think this means for future capability development? Sullivan activated displays showing ballistic modeling that extended beyond even Santos's record-breaking achievement. With continued advancement in computational support and atmospheric prediction, precision shooting at ranges approaching 5,000 meters becomes theoretically feasible. Your analytical methods have opened possibilities that most experts would have considered impossible 5 years ago. That evening, Tiffany found herself in her office, surrounded by mathematical research that had evolved far beyond her original interest in optical equipment maintenance. Her reading glasses reflect light from computer displays, showing ballistic calculations that influence military operations worldwide, atmospheric modeling that served civilian research applications, and training methods that unlocked human potential in ways no one had previously imagined.
Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez entered, carrying news that would define the next phase of Tiffany's career. "Ma'am, I have orders from the Pentagon. Your promotion to Lieutenant Colonel has been approved, along with an assignment to establish precision shooting programs for Allied military forces. International training missions that will spread your analytical methods globally." Tiffany looked around her office, filled with evidence of transformation that had begun with cleaning scopes in an armory and evolved into scientific contributions that influenced multiple fields of study. Her journey from invisible equipment specialist to internationally recognized expert in precision ballistics represented possibilities that existed within analytical approaches to technical problems. "What about the program here?" she asked, concerned about maintaining capabilities that had taken years to develop. "Rodriguez will assume command of domestic training operations," came the reply. "Your methods are now institutionalized, teachable by instructors you've trained, supported by computational systems you've helped develop. The program will continue expanding while you establish similar capabilities internationally." Rodriguez smiled with professional satisfaction. "Ma'am, you've built something that exists independently of any individual contribution. The analytical methods you developed are now standard training curricula. The mathematical approaches you pioneered are being adopted by civilian researchers, and the capabilities you've demonstrated are influencing strategic military policy at the highest levels." As Tiffany prepared to transition from program director to international instructor, she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her from equipment maintenance to global recognition as a precision ballistics expert. Her reading glasses, once a symbol of weakness and limitation, had become associated with analytical capabilities that achieved what conventional training considered impossible. The girl who had been dismissed for taking too long cleaning scopes had revolutionized how military personnel approached problems requiring extreme precision under challenging conditions. Her mathematical methods were being taught in military academies. Her atmospheric modeling techniques were influencing civilian ballistic research, and her training programs were producing capabilities that served American strategic interests worldwide. 6 months later, Lieutenant Colonel Tiffany Brooks stood on a mountain range in Allied territory watching international students apply analytical methods she had developed to precision shooting challenges that pushed beyond conventional military doctrine. Her program had expanded to serve strategic relationships that strengthened American military partnerships while advancing scientific understanding of human performance under extreme conditions. Staff Sergeant Chen, now serving as one of Tiffany's international instructors, approached with a report that validated everything they had built together. "Ma'am, our allied partners are achieving precision shooting capabilities that exceed their previous standards by 1,500 to 2,000 meters. The analytical methods are proving universally applicable across different equipment systems and environmental conditions." Tiffany adjusted her reading glasses and looked across the training facility where military personnel from 6 different countries were learning mathematical approaches that could transform how they served their national interests. "Chen, what we've accomplished goes beyond military training. We've demonstrated that analytical expertise can unlock human potential that most people never realize they possess." As the sun set over the international training facility, Tiffany made final entries in her notebook. The same notebook that had begun with routine equipment maintenance calculations and evolved into scientific research that influenced global military capabilities. Her mathematical methods were being applied to problems that extended far beyond precision shooting. Analytical approaches that served human achievement in ways she had never imagined possible. The equipment specialist with reading glasses, who had been invisible in an armory, had become a teacher whose analytical methods unlocked human potential that changed how people approach challenges requiring extreme precision under impossible conditions. Her legacy would influence military capabilities for generations while advancing scientific understanding of what human beings could achieve through systematic analysis and mathematical expertise. Master Sergeant Santos, now setting records that pushed towards 5,000-meter precision shooting, represented the next generation of analytical precision that would carry Tiffany's methods into military operations that hadn't been imagined when she first began cleaning scopes with systematic attention to detail. Mathematics had taken them beyond the impossible, and the journey was just beginning. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.